to Drum Talk and another episode of Ask Earl Anything. Now, in today's episode, I've got about 8 questions. So I'm not going to do them in any particular order, but let's start I'm going to start at the bottom today. So the bottom was probably the first question, by the way. So the first question comes from Drumman190, my friend William. By the way, this probably won't come out until the day of the show, but I'm going to be on Drumman190's show on Friday. Yes, I'm going to be on the Friday night show, the live show. I'm doing a bunch of videos with collaborations with William. I'm also doing some solo videos, of course. Can't remember all the videos that are in it, but I actually got some of my video stuff I sent to him to be a part of the show. So anyhow, looking forward to be on William's show. Let's start there. So that's the first promo is for William's show. Second thing he asked me, do I plan to do more hard rock songs? Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith, Van Halen? And the answer to the question is yes, I do. I don't know about Guns N' Roses. I may do another Guns N' Roses song. The last one I don't think was that great, to be honest. That was not my favorite song I've done. But there are some Van Halen and some Aerosmith songs that are in that wheelhouse of mine that I can do and I plan on doing. I'm actually looking at doing a lot more different songs. I found some really great drumless tracks out there on YouTube that I'm now pulling from. And if you just type in drumless tracks, there's a couple guys that are putting up stuff right now. I don't know how long they'll get away with it for. But right now, there's some great tracks out there. I did my Make Me Smile track, which is going to be on William's show this week. Chicago Make Me Smile. It's the extended single version. It's definitely not an album version. It was definitely a single version for FM radio, that version. Because it has the front part of Make Me Smile and it has the back part of Make Me Smile and the solo section. And it's longer than the one that's on Chicago's Greatest Hits. The Chicago 9, Chicago's Greatest Hits, which I learned to play as a kid with the little solo. But the solo is the same, it just has all that additional extra movement stuff from Now More Than Ever, which is the end of the suite. The Chicago 2 Ballet for a Girl in Buchanan suite. So basically Make Me Smile was never meant to be a solo song by itself. The producers of Chicago basically put that together. I don't know why I got off on Chicago, but I love Chicago, as you can tell. So anyhow, I did that cover because somebody put it up there on YouTube. And it was drumless, and it was great, and it was a lot of fun. And I really want to play with drumless tracks. Playing where I have to bury the drums is a lot harder, I'm finding, and I really enjoy it. So yes, I plan on doing them. So thank you, William, for the question. And maybe this will get out before your show. I'm not sure yet. My second question comes from Leonard Smith. And Leonard Smith said, what are your thoughts on electronic drums? Now, I've got a lot of subscribers that are E-drummers. And I do not want to offend any E-drummers, okay? I am not a big E-drum guy. But I will tell you, I had my time when I wanted electronic drums. It was the 1980s. It was the first Simmons kits. Those 6-sided drum kits. I wanted a Simmons SDS-5. I would have taken a Simmons SDS-7 or an SDS-9 or the SDS-8s. I had a Simmons SDS-1 pad. Okay, that was my first delving into electronic drums, was that SDS-1 pad, which was basically a one-shot pad which had one sound on it because you put a little prom in, an EEPROM, and you had a run generator so that if you got that sound, you get and when it ran, it had like kind of a pitch change automatically. Every time you hit it, it got a different pitch, which was cool for doing runs. But it was a toy, basically. It really wasn't cool. Then electronic drums changed, and I got my first D4. I had a D4 in the 90s, the Alesis D4. I bought a couple drum machines too during the 80s. I had that Simmons pad, but I also had a Roland 505, and I also had an Alesis HR16, which by the way is up here on my shelf at the top. I'm not going to go grab it, it's not out of the camera shot. But I had an HR16, I still own it today, it still works. It's got 49 sounds in it. So I got a D4, and it's a rack mountable D4, and I got some pads for it, and I used it for a little bit, and then I traded it for a Noble Cooley snare drum with my friend Pat O'Donnell. And then he had the D4 for the longest time. I don't even know if he ever got rid of it. I think he finally got rid of it. And that was as far as I went with electronic drums, other than having to play on electronic drum kits in the 2000s. They became very popular in churches. Prior to the 2000s, with the Roland V drum kit, all of the drum kits that were trying to go electronic drums with acoustic drum samples, those drum kits were not fun to play. The best was a company called D-Drum. And by the way, D-Drum now makes acoustic drums, which I'm not a big fan of, by the way. I will be quite honest with that. But their D-Drum electronic drums were state-of-the-art in the 90s, the 80s and 90s. Another company that was state-of-the-art in the 80s was a company called Cat. And they had the Drum Cat, which was kind of like an Octapad. I used an Octapad extensively, the first version of one in one of the bands I was in. We had an Octapad and I used that. So I was triggering sounds off of an Octapad, triggering my HR-16 and other things. I even had one of these, because when I bought that D4 I needed some pads, and there was a music store in New Jersey that had one of these Simmons. It had like 9 little Simmons pads on it. It was I forget, the Suitcase Simmons kit. Everything was XLR though, so you had to have XLR converting to 1/4 inch to work with the D4. But I used that too and kind of butchered that thing. It was a piece of junk actually. It was useless, that thing. I think they created it for a guy named Jimmy Browler, who was one of the first recognized Linn drum programmers in the world. He was on lots of albums like Cyndi Lauper's She's So Unusual. He was on Jimmy Browler was on the Stevie Winwood album Back in the High Life. He did a lot of the drum programming for that album. So anytime you heard the Simmons drums or the drum machine programming, that was Jimmy Browler that did it. And I think they built that Suitcase kit for him. It wasn't for his personal use, but they built it based on his specs, because he would go in the studios and program drums using the Suitcase kit on the Linn drum. So I've had my experience with electronic drums. That's what I'm trying to say. I've had my share of time with electronic drums. But when they got into churches in the 2000s pretty heavily, I just was not digging them. And where it went to and where it was at that point in time, it just wasn't doing anything for me. Then the V-drums became kind of a standard, and I kind of lost the desire to even have a Roland kit. I went back in 2014 and I bought an SBD-SX sample pad. And I think the sample pad's got some awesome sounds in it, and you can put lots of sounds in, and you can do a lot with that sample pad. So I'm a fan of the sample pad. I just don't play the kind of music enough where I can use it. I was using it in a church situation. But I will say this, if I had to go electronic drums, I'd be doing what guys like Beats by Jay are doing, or there's a couple of my friends, Mike, another drummer who's got a Q&A show now. These guys are using samples off of Addictive Drums or Stephen Slate Drums or whatever. There's so many different sample companies you can go through, and they're triggering their samples through their E-kit into their DAW and getting their sounds. And I would go that direction. And if I had to move for some reason and I didn't have this beautiful studio that I'm blessed with, I would definitely be thinking about going that direction. Also including the E-cymbals that are really good, and I'm not sure what they are yet either. Joba Key, I think, is one of them. Zildjian makes an E-cymbal. I'm not a real fan of the Roland cymbals, the rubber cymbals. I'm not a big fan of. The Alesis kits don't really turn me on from what I've seen of them. The Yamaha kit's kind of interesting, but we're talking about pads. I would want to go with more of that real drum look. So anyhow, I hope that answered the question. I think the camera's running out on me, so I'm trying to beat the camera right now, but sorry to wind it up, but hope that answers the question. I'm not a big fan of them, but if I had to use them, I would find a way to use them. I'd go the best way possible. I'd find the best route possible to do it. Okay, I got 8 questions, and I got through 2 questions on the first 11 minutes. Let's see how that gets cut. Alright. The next one comes from GAC Drums. He asks, I've had a few songs get through the YouTube copyright. Is it because I'm new or am I just lucky? And I'll also include that one with Jay Klein's question, which was regarding putting the song in private. Do you still get notifications about copyrights? So these are two YouTube copyright questions. GAC Drums, I think you're lucky. That's where you're at right now. You're lucky if you haven't got any notices somehow. In actuality, you may have got notices. They go to your Google account, your Google email account. So I get notices all the time on things I put up. Matter of fact, I put something up on Instagram, and for the last 6 months I've been putting only videos pretty much on Instagram and only drum stuff on Instagram. And it's linked to my Facebook drum lesson account for Earl, for Drum Talk, because I call my drum lesson studio Drum Talk Drum Lessons on Facebook. Look it up and friend me if you'd like. And all my Instagrams go to that, are posted on that site. Okay? Anyhow, today I posted a clip of Make Me Smile, the introduction to Make Me Smile, and Instagram flagged me and didn't send it through. I was amazed that it didn't send it through. So anyhow, long and the short of it, it got onto Facebook. So normally what happens is it gets onto Instagram but doesn't get to Facebook. So it's getting crazy out there. I mean, I don't know what these publishers think we're doing to their poor songs, but they don't want them done by us apparently. So it's getting harder and harder to not get some kind of a copyright notice from them. Now usually on YouTube, you get the copyright notice saying you're not in trouble, you're just going to be, you know, we just want you to know you're using somebody else's stuff and you can't monetize it. I can't monetize anything anyhow. So I don't care anymore. That's the way I look at it. I mean, if you don't have 1,000 subs and I hear you have to have 1,000 views, 4,000 views per month, you can't monetize anything anymore. That's the YouTube world we live in. So, anyhow, they're really making it hard. And what they are making it is, if we want to get to 1,000 subs and the 4,000 views, you got to put a lot of content up there. Which I seem to be one of those guys right now. But I will tell you that the idea of taking lots of time to make great content, YouTube's basically taking that out of the mix right now. And the idea that somebody's going to have that crazy drummer video with the twirling the fingers and stuff and throw that up on YouTube and make, you know, $50,000 off of it, those days are gone. If you go throw that one crazy video you have, like America's Funniest Videos, and you put it on your YouTube channel today, and you don't have any subscribers, you make nothing on it. And even if the evening news plays it for 6 million times, doesn't really matter. You're not going to get any money for it. So YouTube's screwing us all. You hear that, YouTube? It's right in the middle of my video. You're screwing us all, and I want you to know it. Now, so you got lucky, GAC Drums. As far as Jay Klein's question, yes, you get copyright notices even if you put it in private. As soon as you put it in, you get an email. And that's my little trick for not trying to publish it, and I haven't gotten a strike because of it. So that's my little YouTube rant in the middle of this. Sorry about that. Next question from an old friend of mine, Brian Bruger. Brian used to be the sound guy at one of the churches I played drums at. And he asked me if I've done a tutorial on the shuffle. Well, if you've been following my jazz series, Jazz Lesson number 2 and Jazz Lesson number 3, I went into a little bit about the shuffle pattern. Now that's one of the shuffle patterns. I haven't done an extensive tutorial on Texas Shuffle versus the Chicago Shuffle versus the Rock Shuffle versus the Halftime Shuffle. I haven't done that yet. By the way, I want to say this since we're talking about shuffles. And Brian, thank you for the question, and I miss seeing you, and I hope everything's well with your family out there where you live in these days. Let me say something about shuffles since we're on shuffles. I did a influence video on Jeff Porcaro, and because Jeff Porcaro's name's in the title, I have got a lot of hits on that video. That's probably my most popular video. But I have people that they watch the intro, and I really did suck on playing the Rosanna Shuffle that day. Well, actually, I was playing it to the track, and it was kind of hard to make it happen. And I don't know why I used that little bit of clip of me just playing the Rosanna Shuffle to the track. I wanted to put a little bit of the Jeff video on there of me playing it, but I get nasty comments every couple weeks now from somebody that says you don't know how to play the shuffle. Okay, maybe I don't know how to play the shuffle. That's a possibility, but I'm not trying to play the shuffle on that video. I'm talking about Jeff Porcaro. Okay, I'm not trying to play the shuffle, but if you put that up there, okay, and you want to criticize my halftime shuffle, you better show me how to play it right. That's all I got to say to you. And that's my new answer to anybody that says that to me is, okay, I went to your channel, let me see you play it. Not that I'm trying to teach you how to play, because I've never had a lesson on the halftime shuffle. It's not been part of my thing to do a lesson on the halftime shuffle. But anyhow, that was a little bit of a rant. Maybe I need to cut that one. So, somehow I got on the shuffle. Brian Bruger, thank you for the question. The next question is from AR Drummer, Adam. Adam's a great drummer. You should check out his videos, and you should check out his channel. He actually has more than 1,000 guys, so he has a bigger channel than I do, that's for sure. Adam says, how do you store your cymbals? Well, the reason why I left this without the green, which is actually, the green has got two purposes. It makes my room look a little cleaner, because you don't see all my junk here. But I probably should use the gong on myself to stop me from saying stuff sometimes, shouldn't I? Anyhow, I always want to hit that gong. I love that gong. One of the reasons why I didn't put the green screen up was because I wanted to show you that this is where I store a lot of my cymbals. I have 4 places to store cymbals and this little shelf for my splash cymbals. I also have cymbals in cymbal bags, and of course I keep them on the kits. That's another thing I do. So anyhow, around my room, building these shelves and having a place to push the cymbals in is kind of nice. It's kind of like a drum shop. Like if you were to go into a drum shop where they had a lot of cymbals, you would find them all piled up in. So I have my rides, China cymbals, crash cymbals, hi-hats, and splashes are over here. Okay, and I've got a couple gongs. I've got to find a use for the gong in a video one of these days. I did a kind of a percussion video on if you go back into my videos, you'll find I did as a kind of an intro to my drum lesson business, and I used this gong. It's just a beautiful gong, just a beautiful sound to it. Anyhow. Alright. So, Adam, I hope that answers your questions. I store them here, cymbal bags. Nothing really fancy though. It's not really fancy. It's just kind of in a shelf, and I've got dividers. You know, you got to make sure your shelves are about 24 inches or higher. I did that because I was thinking I was one day going to have a 24-inch bass drum, but I didn't. So, the next question is from Lee Zoe. And Lee Zoe asks the question, is it possible to match a dark and bright cymbals? Is it possible to match dark and bright cymbals? And I will tell you that yes, it's possible. Okay? And the reason why is, at least in my experience, is the way I pick cymbals, even if it's a dark or a bright, I tend to find similar pitches that kind of work with one another, and the overtones kind of work with one another. Even if I choose really dark Carope with this bright, thin 16-inch 2002 crash, they still work together. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you pick cymbals and you have an ear for picking your cymbals, I have found if it's a Sabian or a Zildjian or a Paiste or an Istanbul, then I have all 4 different types of cymbals, or a Wuhan, they all seem to have the similar qualities, and they all kind of match up with one another. Now, I try not to do that too often, but I will occasionally mix a Paiste and a Zildjian together, and I did that for a while. I was playing this Carope, and I had a 20-inch Paiste 505 crash, and I had an 18-inch Zildjian A crash, and those crashes kind of worked well together. and I would use these Zildjian hi-hats. So it all depends on the situation. But yeah, you can mix them. But I think you've got to have an ear for cymbals, and every cymbal I've picked, I've definitely I have that ear. Matter of fact, I don't know who asked this question, but I saw this question on one of my videos this week, and I went through my whole Ask Earl Anything number 7, and I did not find this question. So whoever asked this question, this is the bonus question for you. I'm sorry I'm not identifying you. And it might have been Adam, but I don't think it was. Somebody asked me a question, how many cymbals do I have? Now that's an awesome question, by the way. I think I'm at 52 cymbals right now that I own that are in the studio somewhere of varying degrees, be it splash cymbals or ride cymbals or Paiste cymbals or Sabian cymbals. I have 52, and I've owned over 100 cymbals in my lifetime. So that's the answer to that question. I have an extensive collection of cymbals, and I'm a cymbal nut, and that does not include the gong or the gongs. By the way, I picked this gong. My wife picked this gong. This is a funky gong. This is called a swing gong or an opera gong. And when you hit it, it goes. It's very funky, but it's not pretty. This is pretty. Alright, sorry. I'm enamored by my stuff today. So I hope that answers your question, Lizo. I think you can put them together. Okay? But I usually try to match my cymbals by sets. You know, Zildjians with Zildjians, Paistes with Paistes. But there's no rhyme or reason. There's a few of my videos where I actually have an Istanbul, a Zildjian, and a Paiste in it. You know, I mix them up. So, all depends on your ears. And the last question, this has been a long one. My last question goes to Tony at All Classic Drum Covers. And Tony asked the question, what do you think about using metronomes to calibrate your timing? Well, first off, I think everybody should use a metronome. Let me just say that right off the bat. When I was a kid, the type of metronome we had was one of those Seth Thomas metronomes. It went click, 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 and it went back and forth. They weren't real practical when you were practicing drum kit. Once the Dr. Beats came out, okay, I think there was Seiko made one that had an earpiece. It was like a mono earpiece back in the 80s. That had a dial on it. It was really cool. Electronic was one of the first electronic metronomes, a Seiko metronome. I didn't have one. But once I got a Dr. Beat back about 10, 15 years ago, the first Dr. Beats, and you could plug them into your system or plug them into your headphone amp or plug them into your headphones, period. That would make it really practical to working on clicks. Today, there's no excuse a drummer doesn't have a metronome. Every cell phone has an app for metronomes. And there's no reason why, as a drummer, you don't pull out your cell phone and have that metronome app, one of them. I use one called Tempo. There's another cool app that isn't a metronome app, but it's called Live BPM. And Live BPM, you put the phone next to you, and it shows you what your metronome marking is that you're playing at. It actually hears your rhythms. And if you're playing a live gig, if you want to see if you're in the zone, you put that on and you'll know I'm at 87, then it moves up to a little bit, 87.6, 86.8. It watches your little variations by tenths of a metronome marking. And that's how we play. And that's the funny thing about the question you asked, Tony, because the problem with playing with clicks all the time is you can sound stiff and metronomic. When I learned to play with click tracks way back in the 80s, and when I got axed off the first album I was on by John Hammond, which is a whole story, you can watch that video on my YouTube channel, the reason why I was having an issue with the clicks, and the click was beating me. You don't want to let the click beat you, you got to make the click your friend. So as soon as you start to realize that the click is nothing more than a cowbell player, if you play with it like you're playing with a cowbell player, all of a sudden you start playing behind the click, or you get a little on top of the click, or you lay it onto the click. And depending on the producer you're working with, or the people you're working with and how anal they want to be about it. Some guys are like, I want it dead on. Well, being dead on all the time is really hard. I'm not going to lie. Especially for a guy that likes to play with the time. But the great players back in the early days of the click track in the 80s, 70s and 80s, when it first started introducing itself, those guys all learned how to play a little ahead, a little behind, and play with the click. And it was their friend. It was like having a percussionist on the gig. And I've heard many pro drummers talk about that's how they deal with the click. So I think playing with a click track is a wonderful thing, and a lot of my church situations where I play with a click. Every song is played with a click. Every song is played with a track, and every song is played with a click. And that's not a problem. And you can have freedom and facility still playing along with the click. The key is when you get on a gig, when you don't have a click track, what do you do? And a lot of young drummers don't know how to play a gig without a click track. They don't know how to count off tempos, they don't know how to find tempos, and they don't know how to tell guys how to get on tempo. And that's the key of the drummer. The drummer has got to find a way to count the tempos off. Now, one of the tricks for counting the tempo off is this. You sing this song in your head, like the singer's singing it, and then that kind of helps you get the tempo, and you count the tempos off. If you're on a gig without a click. Now, I will tell you, it's much easier to have all your metronome markings programmed into a click, and you hit the button, and your tempos are dead on, and nobody complains that the drummer doesn't know what he's doing. That's the truth. So working a metronome can be a crutch, but I think it's an important learning tool. So yeah, I like the click. I'm not afraid of the click. Don't be afraid of the click. But also learn how to turn it off and play without the click and still have good time. And that's the key to being a great professional drummer, is being able to do both. By the way, a lot of these tracks that you can download from classic rock tracks on YouTube were not done with a click, and they're all over the place. And they're really hard to play with without a click sometimes. So I will tell you that. That's the challenge. And the only way around it is to go in with a cowbell and to play a single track of cowbell to put a click track on it. I hate doing that, and usually nine times out of 10 I don't do it, but when I get a track I just can't find that one spot and it's not laying right, I will go do that. That's the trick of how I deal with those drum covers. Anyhow, thank you for being a part of Ask Earl Anything. Like always, please leave questions, and if you leave questions, they'll be in next week's show. Again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all you as subscribers. By the way, I hit 700 subscribers this week. I'm over it now. Thank you all my subscribers. I'm getting closer to that magic 1,000 number. Yay! I don't know what I'm going to do when I hit 1,000. Oh, I have a symbol to give away. It's still there. Thanks for watching. God bless. Have a great weekend. Bye.